Hey, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on which part of the world you're in. Welcome to this seventh edition of AMA, Ask Me Anything on Clarity Chat. This is also the 55th edition of Clarity Chat, all thanks to your encouragement to keep us going. So, this week we were originally supposed to host Vinay Khargonkar, the Group CIO of L&T, who had to undertake an urgent travel for some health issue in his network. And therefore, we decided to convert it into an AMA session. There's a silver lining to every gray cloud. And that's what we do whenever we have a guest who opts out, we convert it into a direct interaction with each other. So, as always, we keep a backlog of the questions that we haven't answered in our past Clarity Chat sessions. So we schedule them in these AMA sessions. But of course, we always give priority to any questions that come live with us. So, um, So this the platform is also open for all of you to come live with me on chat. There's a potential opportunity if you have a case study to share, if you have any value adds from Clarity Chat that you want to share with others. So just send us a comment mentioning your discussion topic and your openness to come on this chat, and my team will send a private message to you with the virtual studio link. So let's talk real practical stuff. Let's give relief to Gyan over the weekend. So let's look at some of the backlog of past questions that we can cover. One is around SaaS being the most simplified part of enterprise IT. There was an interesting question which is pending for some time now around, the relationship between number of years of experience versus your compensation. Is outsourcing a problem solver or just a change of hands, etc., etc., right? So we'll of course balance these with the audience questions. So as always, you will get honest answers, case studies, my experiences, or any practical approaches and thought processes. So it's all about experiences, no Gyan. Okay. So before we go ahead, let me request my audience to share their name and where they are joining from in the comment box of LinkedIn and YouTube. And meanwhile, let us see who all have joined here. So we have Amandeep. Hey, good evening, Amandeep from Mumbai. Hi, Pramod. Good to see you here. Yes, long old colleagues from Tata Motors CRM days. Thank you, Amarinder, for joining us. Good evening. My tea is here. It got a little late today. Thank you, Shweta. Yeah. Yeah. So a little late, but nevertheless, cheers to everyone. Yeah. So we have Utsav. Utsav has a question. Utsav will pick up your question. And we have Amit Shukla. We have Vijay. Okay, so let's get going. Let us start with the live question. The first question that came right away, okay, from Utsav. So Utsav asked, I wanted to know qualities of a good team leader. Okay, so Utsav, I think the answer to your question is in the question itself. Good team leader, right? So a team leader has to lead a team. Therefore, to be good at being a team leader, you have to put the team first, right? Most times, when people evolve from an individual contributor to a team leader, um, it's a harder transition because when you are working, when you're organizing your work, you are very very systematic and very very, I would say, um, uh, uh, you're very very, how do I say, um, like you about it, the way you conduct your work. The moment you get a team, you get diversity. You have people who think differently, who organize themselves differently, and then you have to let a little bit of control loose, and you have to start focusing from tasks to the outcomes. So a good team leader always focuses on outcomes and is not micromanaging the activities of the team members, right? That means when you are assigning tasks to your team, you're not assigning, do this, but what you're assigning is that by end of the day or by end of the week, this is what we should have achieved, okay, and this is what you should have done. That is one thing. The second thing is that you put the team first. You take care of the team members. What they bring to you is a small part of their life. There is a much bigger context each one of us carries. There is family in it. There are friends in it. There's a particular geography that you're living in it. A good team leader is always looking at the context of the employee, and then trying to see the performance of the team member within that context, and trying to manage the context. So let me give you a small story here, okay, which again is about, like, a good team leader. Um, of course, not mine. I read it somewhere. Um, so Chanakya, when he was setting up Chandragupta to be the emperor of India, he identified that emperor-like qualities in him. He couldn't have done it alone. So he was looking for the best of the warriors, the best of the leaders out there, to join Chandragupta, and he was going around evangelizing this whole dream of unified India and all that. So he found someone who was like absolutely bright, great in managing the team and everything, and but this guy refused to join Chandragupta. So Chanakya sort of, he didn't try to influence him or something. He just said, "Hey, gentlemen, young man, I want to visit your home today evening." Um, so he went to his house, and what he found there was, what he observed there was that this guy had a old mother, and there was nobody at home. It was only he and his mother, and he immediately understood that this guy is opting out because his mother is alone. So Chanakya asked the mother that this is what we are trying to do, and we are trying to find the best of warriors and leaders. Your son is one of them, but you know what? He's very much worried about you. Um, what do you want to say to him? And the mother basically told the son that, hey, you know what? Nothing doing. Uh, you are handpicked for this task. You go and fight. I'll take care of myself. And the guy signed up. So when somebody says no, or when somebody is not able to do the job in in the way that we expect him to, or in the way that the guy is capable of, there's always something or the other which is holding people back, and a good team leader understands it and tries to address the root cause rather than just why something is done or not. Okay. Of course, there are other things that you can Google around Utsav, which is like role clarity, which is about team bonding and all of that. But I just thought like these are two very important things that I wanted to leave with you. Okay. Okay. So we had another question here. Um, this is from Amit Shukla. He says, "Dear sir, how to prove ROI and 100% security?" Amit, I'm not sure whether I understand your question clearly, but let me take a guess. What you're saying is that um, how to sort of prove ROI on security. Is that the one? If that's the one, then just send another ping. Meanwhile, I take another question. Okay. Um, let me take another question for now. This is Harikrishnam Raju. He says, "Hi sir, good evening. Presently, I am working as a UX designer. I have 2 years of experience. Does doing masters in design will help me in career growth, or shall I continue working and growing my experience?" So, Hari, I don't know what is your primary qualification. If your qualification is as a designer itself and you have 2 years of experience, I think you have enough of practical experience, and it's actually perfectly okay to go for a master's in design. University education always helps you because you go much deeper. When we are working, we typically are working in like achieving some of the immediate goals which are there, whether like it's the product screens or whether it's a particular user experience. But the underlying thing, what is that subject all about? Uh, what are the theoretical aspects of it? What are the other psychological human experience aspects of it? Anthropological aspects of it? I think some of these, they cannot be learned when you are trying to meet a week's target, or let's say a sprint target, or maybe a quarter's target. So it always helps to take some time out, um, take a university course, and then um, set up yourself for a leap in your career. It always helps. And of course, the thing also is that the field of user experience and design, it's changing very very fast. Earlier the UX design used to be about screens, and now it is about the voice interfaces. It's about various other kinds of human and computer human computer interfaces. It's getting more and more complex, and I think it is always good to get some formal inputs on that, right? So let me take another question, and then I come to our backlog. So we have Amandeep asking, as a salesperson while working on an opportunity, when your primary point of contact is acting as a gatekeeper after one or two interactions and not helping in taking the sales case forward, how to reach the leadership without hurting your point of contact's ego? Okay. So, Amandeep, again, think from the first principles. Why is the gatekeeper working as a gatekeeper? Why is he not helping you, go forward, or helping this? Is he not convinced? So you have to start asking some questions. Is this guy not convinced? Is he just humoring you, or is he not sort of taking you around further in the organization because he is uh, because he's a little insecure. That, let's say, if you start talking to other people, then he or she loses importance. So you have to really go into the motivations. What are there? Either somebody just humoring you. There's no intention to buy, in which case, no point pursuing or losing your time on it. If it is insecurity, then you got to build a sort of greater trust with the person. He or she should get that assurance that you're not going to be, the moment you meet somebody more senior than him, you're not going to be sort of like throwing him like a fly, right? um, and I think that building the trust is very important. But yeah, sometimes you do get people who are, who you can't figure out, in which case you got to make a sale. There's nothing personal about it. You can find your other points of contact, and then there's always a story that you can tell, that hey, I bumped into your CIO in the elevator, and I told him I'm working with you, and he asked me to see him. But you know what, I'll keep you posted, I'll keep you in the loop, don't worry. Okay. I don't know whether it helps you. But yeah, every case is different. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Amit says that yes, it was about how to prove ROI on security. So I'll come back to Amit. So Amit, see, um, again, as I promised to you that I talk through my experience. I had faced that problem that we did need a substantial amount of investment in security, and we had this problem about how do you prove ROI on security, and therefore we took a inverse approach, which was we built a risk register. Okay, of course, I was talking to others as to how to crack this problem of ROI and how to crack this problem of getting the right investments. Just a minute. Okay. Um, so we built a risk register. It is basically a combination of what is the impact of a particular risk on your business operations, and what is the probability of that risk happening, and you multiply the two. You can rate it on a scale of out of 5 for both of them, and then multiply the two. That becomes your impact, right? That becomes a risk score. And then you can parse it on a matrix where you can say, hey, these are my top risks, and these are my, and this is how the risks are kind of gradual. Like sometimes the risks may be local. For example, a particular plant floor machines being on Windows 3.1, but that is not, within the corporate network. So therefore, the risk is isolated. The risk is there, but it's isolated. Versus, something like, for example, a ransomware. If one machine gets affected, you can potentially have the entire operations, come to a knot. So now, once you do that, then there is a discussion that we need to have, where, I mean, we have to put the ball on the other court, that which of these risks are you willing to accept, right? So so I had set up a management information security forum, which had people who would really get impacted by any security incident. So, like for example, corporate communication, right? So they need to do a damage control if a risk happens, or the legal guys. Again, they need to basically get into sort of action as soon as a risk happens, or let's say, for example, the HR guys or the finance guys, right? So taking these people into a forum, we used to present these risk scores to them, and we used to then have a sort of healthy discussion about what this means, what are the various options to mitigate these risks, what kind of investments it will require, if and then so you drive a sort of priority list of investments, and then you basically haggle with, not really haggle, but discuss with this team of senior leaders, and then say that what, these are the absolutely necessary investments which we will do this year. These are the ones we will take the next year. So something like a security roadmap, and along with the investments and the timelines and all that. Now what happens is that um, there's a set of people who have looked at it from different points of view, and this just gives your entire investment plan on security much better weight and much better sponsorship, because you have discussed it with other people. So very crudely, you need to discuss, you need to take other people into confidence in terms of the impact of these secure, of not making the security investments, and you just need to find more sponsors, right? But security governance is the key which I would like you to look at. Okay, so maybe we can take this offline later. But generally, you should not be looked at as the only person who is batting for that investment in security. It should be a set of people who have discussed, debated, and they have agreed that yes, this is a necessary investment. So not necessarily you need to have an ROI, but you need to compensate that by taking a more number of leaders into confidence, and seeking their sponsorship. Okay, so we have. Let me now go back to our. So there was a very intriguing question that had come. It was, how much do you agree in saying context is in greater demand than the content in the IT section of any business? Vinay, can you bring up that question? Is the information vulnerable to the business context? Hackers are more interested in context or content. So this question really intrigued me. This question came from Parthasarathy, and I requested him to join us in the studio, and here he is. So let me add him to our discussion. Hey, hi Parthasarathy.
Hi. Hello, Mr. Jack.
Hey, how are you? Cheers.
I'm blessed. I'm blessed always, Mr. Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really love that look of yours, man. It's a blessed look, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So, is it okay if I call you Partha?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, Partha, I was a little intrigued by this question, and then I told Vinay that, hey, you know what? Let's get Partha into the chat. So, yeah, can you just explain this, and maybe what is your view on this? What is your answer to this? And then we can have a quick discussion on this.
Yeah. So, see, basically, what happens? Uh, there are two sides to any activity, isn't it? So, one is the outcome and the output, right? So, whoever is concentrating on the output, uh, their hunger for iterating it again. Okay. So that becomes a very watchful point. But whereas if somebody is looking on the outcome, then it is not just iteration. It is about transcending one stage to the next stage, right? So, so with respect to security, or I think this particular point, I think when you were discussing with someone else, I forgot that even, but just flashed me, and then I thought I should put this question
Sure.
to you. So, how do we as leaders, how do we identify this context and content? Right? Somebody is going behind the content, or somebody is going behind the context, and how do we quickly, you know, uh, whether it is a guess or assumption, or do we have any sort of system which we need to think of to implement, where if someone is hitting us through any mode, uh, how do we quickly come to that identification of easy going behind the content or easy going behind the context? The context is more dangerous because you will definitely get into the next context of uh, of the
I
entire.
got you. I got you. Yeah, Partha, I got your point. In fact, I think this is a very subtle point. And I think seeing you in the avatar that you're right now, it is like, yeah, I can expect some really really subtle questions from Partha. So Partha, I think it's a let me rephrase what you said. Initially, which is about output and outcome, right? So output is always like a tangible short term, which you are able to measure, which is like something that you can iterate. But outcomes are beyond that. Like, I mean, just to take an example. So, let's say two factories producing the same amount of output, let's say 100 cars a month, right? But in one factory, you have, let's say a great industrial relation climate, good recreational tools, like, good employee facilities, like, the drop to their homes and pick up and drop to their homes. Let's say a crash within the factory, etc., etc. And in the other factory is like, just 100 cars per day, per day, per day, right? And rest of the things, you just leave it to. Uh, you're not really focusing. You're just focusing on it. And I think that's the big difference between, what we call between, let's say, managers and leaders, or between good and great. Okay. So to that extent, I think your question is very very valid. And there is no real, I would say, textbook answer to it, because it is the difference that the particular individual who's the leader of that place, that guy is making the difference between, taking going beyond output, to the outcomes. Okay, so the outcomes here are, output is just for the business, which is 100 cars a day. But the outcomes are like, to the society, to the employees, like, to the environment, and to the ecosystem at large, how you're treating your vendors and all that, right? So, is am I getting you?
I think
What you're coming
you,
to?
you started with a nice example where uh, okay, I think for the benefit of others whoever is there in the chat, and then and for us also, I'll just try to cite this uh, uh, same example. The 100 cars, whatever is the out, daily output of one company, and then holistically uh, all the HR related activities are taken care of the other company. So I'd like to add to it. So, and making the output very clear, saying that the outcome decides the output, but whereas uh, our uh, our execution, the mindset goes from output to outcome. So what happens is, with respect to this security context, what I thought was that if a company is looking at the entire ecosystem, right, whether it is employees in it, or partners in it, or the customers in it. So the ecosystem is comprised of the customer, the employer, the uh, the place, the region, and and the partners, suppliers.
Hmm.
So many are there. So given this particular ecosystem, if any vulnerability in terms of security risk identified, uh,
Hmm.
the main problem what I see is that my outcome of, if I say, as a car manufacturer, or a car OEM, that passing the values to customers, right? That is my ultimate outcome, right? So what I think as value, that I pass it to customers, and in the process I find the risk and opportunities, right? So opportunities could be my own profit could be an opportunity, right? But my own profit is not the output, outcome. So
Absolutely.
and the same goes with the risk also. So that could be a risk which I identify uh, on the product, which is stopping me to passing on to the customer, right? As well as there could be some risk which I identify in the process, where I'm not able to, though I have conceived everything in my design, but I'm not able to take those values to the customer because my process is stuck. So it is the same concept I apply on IT world also, where my outcome is always with respect to what my uh, the what my customer or the user would be help to go to the next level, right? So whereas I am stuck in the process of this security, I am stuck with the process of uh, protecting the content, protecting the information, but the the very purpose of the information lies uh, is the user or the customer who's going to get benefited, right? So when we get
Absolutely.
when we get that context in the mind and approach the security, I see the security itself into a different dimension and different model. Today, uh, unfortunately, uh, these are these are uh, uh, these are being interacted in a very content full manner rather than the contextual manner. Is what I'm thinking,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we also
No,
have many.
I think you have explained it very well, Partha. So, you haven't actually left much for me to say, but let me just summarize, what you said is that, um, yeah, I think, there's one difference between output and outcome that we started with. But, in terms of context and content, many times, we get sort of, in a way, lost in content, like, or, lost in what we are doing. And we lose a sense of why we are doing it, right? Or whether it is really driving that outcome that we are after or not. So it's like, for example, implementing a particular solution, but not really sort of validating it fully, whether it is able to to serve the entire purpose or not, right? And I think many a times when this happens, the the root cause is, in terms of people limiting themselves by their roles. I have to do this, so I don't see beyond it or before it, in terms of whether the entire context is fulfilled or not. I'm like, each one is looking at the content of their respective roles, and that's where, like, your errors in translation can happen. And it's like, one of my leaders used to say that every department is in the green, but the organization is in the red. Everyone is doing everything, but somehow contextually we are not there yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
thanks.
So
Yeah, Partha, go
yeah,
ahead.
I think one last point just to add to that. Uh, know, I used to have a very supportive leader, in our organization. Mr. Kannan, his name is. He used to say, Partha, output is of two types. One is one is the
Mhm.
technical output, and other one is system output. So whoever is whoever is getting into the technical output, uh, their focus might get diverted at any point of time. But somebody who is having the focus on system output, the technical output is like a means to them.
Correct, correct. Yeah, yeah, and you don't really stop at getting the technical output. You're also looking beyond at getting the systemic output. In fact, I think that is one thing that differentiates the leaders from managers, is that you're always looking at whether your work, whether from a departmental point of view, your work may be effective, but from an organizational point of view, is it really adding value? Is it really being useful to other departments or not? And I think so those are some of the questions that everyone needs to ask themselves. Are we being useful to the organization, or are we just meeting departmental objectives?
Especially the security side is getting lost on the content side. This is what very clear identification is coming out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think on the security side, one of the biggest things that people miss out, Partha, is on the human aspects of security. You may do entire tightening, but if you but the weakest link is the employee, or the user out there,
Yeah,
who he just clicks a link on a phishing mail, and all your security goes for a toss, right?
yeah. So on a subtle side, I used to say to the HRs that you are not considering uh, any more humans as resources. We should we should look at in a way that we should resource humans. So resourcing humans is what is HR rather than
Not human resource.
considering resources. Okay, I don't want to take much of the others' time.
Hey, but
Uh,
Partha, before I let you go, why don't you give a short introduction of yourself? Like, what do you do? Where do you work? Which city are you in?
so I work for TVS Motor Company, and I've been with TVS for last 23 years, and I head engineering IT here, and
Okay,
I, I take care of PLM, PDM, and process transformation, digitalization. So that is brief about
awesome.
me.
Hey, thanks, Partha, for joining us today.
Thank
See you,
you.
man. Bye
Thank you.
bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Okay,
You too.
bye. Bye. Yeah, so that was, some real, I would say, gray cell invigorating discussion with Partha. Um, I guess you guys might have guessed by now that my AC is not very effective. I'm really sweating it out here in 40 degree. Uh, okay, so but let's go on to the questions now. I have a question here now. Again, I'm going to live questions from Pankaj Srivastava. Hey Pankaj, good to hear from you on ClariTea Chat. Pankaj used to be my PE from IBM when I was in Tata Motors. So, question: many organizations push for deep skills, that is verticalization of skills in area, but when it comes to assessing someone for higher role, they seek a person with horizontal skills. Geni Rommety called it the T form organization. What do you think individuals should focus on, verticals or horizontal? Pankaj, this is a great question actually, and when it comes to individuals, when it comes to organizations will always go for that T form structure where you have somebody who's more like a generalist, and a people leader, a strategy focused person, and then you build a organization of specialists under him. That's how I built actually my IT organization, because I was a generalist, and I tried to get somebody who was the best in architecture. I tried to get somebody who was the best in program management. I tried to get somebody who was the best in service management, and that's how I built that organization. Now, when it comes to individuals, you know, and of course, what I'm understanding is that this question is coming from everyone's ambition to rise up in the ladder. I think rising up is one part of it, but I think what you need to be really true to yourself about is that what is it that you do not want to do. Okay, now I have seen people who are very clear that they do not want to, be a team leader. They are like so passionate about technology. They're so passionate about a particular area, of knowledge, that they want to just go deeper and deeper into it. It's not that they are not good, they are not good people. In fact, some of these people, they are some of the best mentors. They would teach that particular skill or that particular technology area to anyone and everyone who wants to learn it from them. But they do not want to get into this whole rigmarole of, like, handling their politics, or, like, handling their appraisals, and and all the other stuff that comes with it. Uh, so they are very clear that this is what I want to do and this is what I don't want to do. What I don't want to do is the people management, and these people will typically form the legs of the team, right? And then there are people who are, you know, explorers. I would say have a wider, angle of coverage. Someone like me, curious about anything and everything, and any new area that comes up, willing to sort of understand from an organization point of view as to how it can add value. So if you're a generalist, then you should be looking at going to the bar of the team. And if you're a specialist at heart, you should be looking at being one of the pillars. I know there's no right or wrong that you can be at a particular level or not. But the important thing about, if you want to be right at the top, that means as a generalist, the path to that still goes through the specialization route, which is that you must do something hands-on, each of those things hands-on, for some time, for some amount of time. So most of the companies who have got a great leadership development, sort of approach, okay, they have a very simple philosophy that before you move up, right, you cannot be working in the same function, just rising up vertically, and and be at, let's say, an executive level. So no, you have to have exposure at least in, let us say, three different departments, before we take you to the level above. Because even whether it's a T, or I mean, whether it's the leg of the T or the bar of the T, you have to have that empathy towards your downstream or upstream functions. And that empathy cannot come unless you have been into their shoes. Now, the organizations that do leadership development very consciously, they do these rotations. Whenever they identify someone to be taken one level up, they'll start planning a career roadmap, which takes them to at least a couple of more functions, takes them out of their comfort zone, tests them out in a new function, sees how is their learnability, how is their adaptability, then take them out of their comfort zone once again, put them into something else, again see their, how they deal with new set of people, new set of stakeholders. And if you're going a level above, you definitely need to be more adaptable. You definitely need to be a learner, and you definitely need to be more empathetic towards other functions. And that's what people do consciously. Now, when it comes to you as an individual who's looking at moving up, you can actually think of doing it to yourself. That means if you have spent a long time in a certain function, move up, okay, move sideways, go into a little bit of a discomfort zone, learn, adopt, maybe make another move, and then you will be there. So Pankaj, I have an example here that somebody who had spent a long time in infrastructure actually brought him into strategy, and he was very open to come to strategy, and then from there he moved on to other roles, and he's a chief digital officer today. Somebody who came from something like end user services. I hope the guy is here listening to it, but uh, that's how I would look at it. Eventually, but if you don't like to deal with people, I mean, it's okay to be a pillar of the team. Nothing wrong in that. Okay. Okay, so let me move to another question from our backlog. This one is from Amarinder. Amrinder, I hope you're still there. So I'm requesting Vinay to bring up your question. Is SaaS the most simplified part of enterprise IT in terms of discovery, evaluation, and adoption? Um, how will the buying and selling of enterprise IT products and services become simpler, easier, faster, and more democratic? Okay. So let me take the SaaS part of it. Is it the most simplest, simplified part of enterprise IT? Um, it seems to be. This is how it is sold, but not always, Amrinder, because see, the typical thing about the on-prem software was your ability to, contextualize it for yourself, your ability to customize it for yourself, customize your own processes into it. And there has always been, this debate about standardization versus um, customization. I think there are no right answers to that. Yes, it all has to be driven by your specific context. Whether so for, let's say, commodity processes, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. But for something which is unique to you, which is something where you have an innovation, you wouldn't want to get constrained by the constraints of a particular software, right? And that's where you would want to really customize it for yourself. So, um, now, while on the face of it, SaaS seems to be the most simplified part of enterprise IT, but it may not be always, especially where you're looking at unique capabilities to yourself. Um, Now here, let me come to the thought model, which is a Gartner one, which is called the Pace Layer Framework. Now, this Pace Layer Framework is about the system of records at the bottom layer, then your systems of differentiation at the middle layer, and systems of innovation at the top layer. Okay. Now, as far as your system of records is there, you really want to put them into an. These are like your ERP and your accounting systems, where the standards are established, the reporting compliances, everything is established, and you don't really want to go out of the way. Then you have systems of differentiation like your supply chain systems, your CRM systems, and all of that. Again, they allow you to differentiate, but to an extent you would customize them, but not that much. And then comes your systems of innovation, which is where uh, no one does it like you do, right? So, SaaS is typically good for the middle layer, but I don't think it's a great choice for the top layer, which is the systems of innovation. I think that is where an organization needs to get into the product development mindset, where you adopt the agile product development practices, you adopt open source cloud, and a lot of these startup specific techniques like your A/B testing and other stuff, and do a much faster and very custom, specific to you, not replicable type of capability development for yourself. So the answer is yes and no. um, yes, it makes it simple, but don't use it um, where you want to be the best or you want to be the innovator. Right? Okay, so now let me come back to the live questions here. So Partha Bhattacharya, a different Partha this time. He says JCB sometimes ROI is not enough to justify when not doing anything is not an option, as you are explaining in risk register. Old technology, manual ops are just like a time bomb ticking. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, Partha. I mean, I have dealt with legacy, I've dealt with technical debt enough, and my way of getting investments for those was something similar. That what's the cost of not doing it? Okay, So, but there are KPIs everywhere. You can either invent them, or you can, um, or you can, figure them out internally. Like for example, if you have a aging, creaking SAP system, you can take some of these response times, those transaction times, those kind of parameter, and you can then benchmark it with, let's say, some of your peers, and you can say that, hey, this is where we are, and our transactions are not fast enough. Okay, and so there's an overall productivity impact. See, people everywhere, those who are in the planning or investment approvals or leadership, they love KPIs. So sometimes you have to get those KPIs in front of them. So I can tell you what I did for modernization, which is, I think, the last line of your question here. Old technology, manual ops, etc. Especially for old technology, we created a KPI called Technology Upkeep Index. Okay, so TUI, we used to call it TUI. Okay, so any technology which was behind the two versions behind its latest one is like a bad TUI, okay, or a good TUI. Okay, so and then we set up some objectives, and these are objectives that we shared with the leadership, and we said this is where we want to be. So on the major version, we said we want to be n minus one on TUI. Okay, and on the patch level, we want to be again at maybe, let's say, n minus two or n minus three is okay, on the TUI. So if so, the point is, like, when you are showing your entire technology landscape, and you show anything which is less than n minus one. So if you're on, let's say, uh, version, let's say, Oracle database is at R13, and you are at R11 or lesser, you would be showing a red to everyone. Okay. Now these dashboards are more effective than you think. So they're very, very effective. Um, because that when you're showing those dashboard, nobody's really looking at where that came from, like where that n minus one, n minus two came from. They just look at that, oh my god, we have, like, this is something related to technology obsolescence, and we are like red on 10 out of 15 parameters, and that starts getting everyone's attention towards the need to invest in you. So yes, Partha, ROI is not enough, but definitely think of some KPIs to show people, an RYG type of picture, and help them prioritize investments. Okay. Okay. So let me. So we are at 5:52. We can probably take a couple of questions more. And if any one of you has any rapid fires, something that can be answered in a couple of sentences, or maybe in 30 seconds or less, please send across. Let me prioritize those questions. And by the way, like, all the questions that we don't answer today, we will carry them over to the next AMA, and we'll try to pick them up the way we did it today. Okay. And if any of them is like so subtle or so complex that I can't handle it, I'll invite you to actually discuss with me. Okay, so let's go to the next question from Anurag Agrawal. He says, hi Anurag. Hello, sir. What is the key for new age digital transformation? There is going to be a big shift in automobile sector, which IT service provider to be ready by now or initiate? That means technology shift, resource modeling shift, data security shift. I think the key to new age digital transformation is the experience. So it is not about technology. It is not about um, it's not about bringing in new technology. It's not about showing how well I have done a new technology. It is about, have you differentiated yourself on the experience. Okay, so today we are competing for every kind of resource. We are competing for great talent. We are competing for customers. We are competing on products. And what you need to look at is that, is my product having a completely differentiated and much intuitive, much simplified experience compared to a competitor. And to do that, you will require technology. Similarly, to give a great customer experience, whether it is through a mobile app or whether it is through a product interfacing with your mobile app, or let's say a support person uh, being able to let's say get inside your product through a mobile app and help and serve you faster in multiple different ways, is your customer experience going to be better? Now think about it again. You will require technology to improve that user experience. Similarly, on the employee experience side, so you will require um a new way to think about technology to improve your employee experience, right? And it's not just workplace or collaboration, but it is about everything else, including, right? So, um, so having said that, your next question is are there going to be a big shift in automobile sector which IT service providers should be ready for now or initiate? Mm, Ask me from an automobile point of view. I think you can see there is a big shift in the last 3 or 4 years where there's so much of an emphasis on you know the entire your cockpit experience, right? Because the differentiation on engines, powertrains, suspension, etc., that is in a way going. I mean, you can't really differentiate a powertrain from the other. In fact, people are sharing platforms. These platforms, like same similar looking body and similar transmissions, but one is branded Toyota, one is branded Suzuki. So people are sharing platforms. So what is differentiating here, and what is being going to be your competitive differentiator, is the in cockpit experience. Again, it's the customer experience, not just in cockpit, but let's say what else can you give to the customer before or after he or she has been in the car? Or let's say how is your sales experience, how is your service experience? Can you really lengthen the time between the services that you provide to the customer, and where is the technology in that? So I think those are, like, I don't have any specific recommendations or answers in terms of where people need to go towards, but these are the areas where the shifts are coming, right? So I do see that from a dealership experience point of view, as well as from an ecosystem experience point of view, in terms of your parts availability, your mechanic availability, your breakdowns, and all of that. There is still quite a lot that can be done there. Okay, and probably that is where the good people will differentiate on, right? Okay, so yeah, we are just near the end of it. Let me bring in. I answered Pankaj's question, and he says that another dichotomy is organization push for following the process. At the same time, it is observed mostly that those are able to deliver actually end up breaking the process, and this is packaged as thinking out of the box. Any thoughts on this dichotomy? Oh, Pankaj, this is something we have done so many times together. See, following the process is important because for a large organization, you cannot really, keep things sane if people don't follow the process. So when you're saying, those who are able to deliver end up breaking the process, I would not call it breaking the process. I would call it exception management, right? So whenever there are exceptional circumstances, you have to go outside of the set process, and that is why the leaders are there. If entire organization could run at all times in all kinds of scenarios, in all kinds of situations with the same set of processes, you will not require managers and leaders. Managers and leaders are supposed to exercise their judgment to identify where the process will fail to deliver the customer experience or will fail to deliver the outcome, And that is when they are supposed to intervene and find either a process workaround or break the process and then go for necessary approvals. A bit of it is actually about risk taking as well. So you will see that people who who do really well are able to take that risk and break the process if required in case of an exceptional situation. Okay. Oh my God, I'm really floored by the number of questions which are there. Um, so um, I am not sure whether we can take more of them. So let us move towards closing the session today for a change on time. Okay. So, but I can see that there were many more people who were contributing today to the questions. Let me not bring up these here, but let me at least mention the names here. So we had Amarinder, mentioning about every department is in the green, but the organization is in the red. Yeah, I mean, this is my favorite, Amarinder. Happens many times. We have Dattatreya Patnaik from Oman asking a question. So, Dattatreya, we will probably park it somewhere. Um, Again, we had Kapil Shukla joining from Singapore. Um, but maybe, we'll again park it for later. So, thank you so much, everyone, for engaging. I think we have again increased. So, we were looking at reducing the backlog of our questions. At the end of this session, we have managed to increase the backlog with so many questions that all of you have asked. Thank you. Keep it coming. I think these interactions and these questions and the kind of engagement that we see today, these are the things that keep us going. So thank you once again for interacting, engaging, attending, and to all of those who are watching the recording, a big thanks to you too. And everyone, please enjoy your family time during the rest of the weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.